So, who's really on the hook for sin? I mean, legally speaking. Is it us, humanity, for making the bad choice? Or is it God for creating the whole system where that choice was even an option? It's one of the oldest, thorniest questions out there. But today, we're going to try something different. We're going to set aside all the usual philosophical debates and look at this through a whole new lens: ancient property law. Okay, let's start with something we can all wrap our heads around. Imagine you borrow your friend's car. They give you permission, you've got the keys, you have authority to drive it. But then, you crash it. So who's legally responsible? Is it just you, the driver, or does your friend, the actual owner of the car, have some kind of responsibility too? The answer, as you probably know, is, well, it's complicated. It's often both, just on different levels. Keep that idea in your back pocket. Now, usually, when this whole question of liability for sin pops up, the conversation just dives headfirst into this huge philosophical tangle, right? God's total power versus our free will. It's always framed like it's one or the other. If God is truly all-powerful, how can we really be responsible? But if we're totally responsible, what does that do to God's sovereignty? It feels like you have to pick a side. But what if that's just the wrong way to frame the question entirely? What if there's another way in? The material we're looking at today suggests a completely different approach, a practical, legal framework built on ideas we can actually understand, like ownership, stewardship, and liability. The whole argument is that maybe this legal model can slice right through that philosophical fog and give us a much clearer picture. So let's start with the absolute foundation of this entire legal way of thinking, the idea that, at the end of the day, responsibility always traces back to the owner. To see how this works, let's look at a really clear example from ancient law. Let's say a man goes out and digs a big pit in his field, but then he just leaves it uncovered. Now, pay attention to the logic here. The law doesn't care about the ox's free will. It doesn't ask if the ox was being clumsy or not paying attention. None of that matters. The responsibility falls squarely on the person who created the dangerous situation, the owner of that pit. Liability is tied directly to ownership of the problem. Simple as that. Okay, let's drive this point home with one more case. A person starts a fire, maybe to clear some brush in their field, but the wind kicks up and that fire gets loose. And again, it's the exact same principle. The court isn't going to listen to some argument about the will of the wind. No way. The person who started the fire is liable because they owned that fire. You see the pattern, right? Ownership equals ultimate responsibility. All right, so if the owner is ultimately responsible, then where does that leave humanity in all of this? Well, to answer that, we have to get really clear about the difference between two kinds of power. The source material we're digging into points out two really important Greek words here. First, there's dunamis. This is God's power. Think raw, absolute, inherent sovereignty. It's the power of the creator, the ultimate owner. But then you've got exousia, and that's the kind of authority humanity has. It's not our own, it's delegated, it's limited. It's been given to us by a higher power. It's the authority of a steward, a manager, not the owner. And that distinction, that difference between being the owner and just being the manager, is the absolute key to this whole thing. Now we can take that legal framework and apply it to the big picture, the relationship between God and us. So let's lay this out like we're building a legal case. Step 1. God is the owner, period. He created it, he owns it. Step 2, the property is, well, everything, the earth and all that's in it. Step 3, humanity is appointed as the steward. We're given that exousia, that delegated authority to manage the property. So what's sin in this model? It's a trespass. It's the steward stepping outside the boundaries of their given authority. And here it is, the big insight. Liability isn't an either-or thing. It's shared. God, as the owner who created the whole system, who dug the uncovered pit, you might say, he bears the ultimate liability on the level of his dunamis. But humanity, as the steward who misused our delegated authority, we're also on the hook. We're liable on the level of our exousia. It's responsibility on two totally different levels. But hang on, this shared liability idea brings up a huge question. What stops the steward's mistakes from completely and permanently wrecking the property? Well, it turns out ancient law had this brilliant failsafe built right into the system for that exact problem. It was called the Law of Jubilee. The rule was simple. Every 50 years, no matter what happened, what debts were racked up, what contracts were signed, all land had to go back to its original rightful owner. It was a giant, system-wide reset button that you couldn't opt out of. And the reason for this law? It's spelled out plain as day. This quote gets right to the heart of it. A steward, say an Israelite family, they had the authority to work the land, to lease it, maybe even to sell their rights to it for a while. But what they could never do is sell it permanently. Why? Because they were never the true owners. God always held the title deed. Now, let's take this amazing idea and bring it right home. In this legal model, you are God's land. You've been given stewardship, that exousia, over your own life. You can mismanage it. You can sell yourself into patterns of sin and destruction, but you do not have the authority to make that sale permanent. The Jubilee principle means the ultimate owner always, always has the final claim and will reclaim his property. So you see what happens? By shifting our whole perspective from philosophy to law, we get to move away from this confusing, endless paradox, and we move toward a much clearer model, a model of partnership and of layered responsibility. So let's just do a quick run-through of the main points here. First, liability isn't all on one party. It's shared between God's ultimate ownership and our delegated authority. God's power, his dunamis, is total and absolute. Our authority, our exousia, is very real, but it's limited and it's on loan. And the real kicker, the law of Jubilee is like a built-in guarantee that the owner ultimately restores what is his. You see, this whole thing isn't about solving a paradox. It's about understanding a legal partnership. And this whole way of thinking leaves us with one last, really provocative question to chew on. We almost always define freedom as just having unlimited choices, being able to do whatever we want. But what if this legal framework is pointing us to a totally different definition? What if real freedom isn't having the absolute power of an owner, but mastering the art of perfect stewardship, learning to live with wisdom and care inside the generous boundaries set for us by a good and benevolent owner?